University of Missouri Healthcare knows you've got better places to be than in a hospital. That's where our world-class technology and highly skilled medical team come in. We get you home sooner. That's important to you and those who wait for you.
Rufus, guess who's home?
Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends. This is the first day of September, Thursday, September 1. And our guest today is Bill Wickersham. We had him on, I think it was about two and a half months ago, and we had a lot of comments about you, Bill. Bill is going to talk about UFO, extraterrestrial phenomenon. Welcome back to Radio Friends.
Thank you.
Now, you've been pretty outspoken about this. I read an op-ed piece in the Columbia Daily Tribune about a week or so ago. We'll touch on that. Right. But you also wrote a letter to the editor to the Columbia Missourian, which calls for hearings by U.S. Congress
precisely
on UFOs and ET visits.
What's interesting about this, that many of the people who are really the big shots in this field, and I'm not, I'm an educational psychologist who just tries to apply my craft to this issue, but there are people who've studied this for at least 40 years, some in Washington, some military and others. And what's happened here is that many of them, when they've called for the hearings, and keep in mind, we've had hearings before. Gerald Ford had some when he was a congressman. Way back then, there was one other one with military. But when they've called for this, they get nothing. What happened here, it's one of these serendipitous things. I write a little letter to the editor, AOL News picks it up. Lee Spiegel of AOLnews.com calls me. We have a 2-hour interview. Then he writes an article incorporating that, and it went like wildfire. I mean, you know, and I'm not the expert, but the fact that I called for something that a lot of other people have called for caught the news, and it went.
So why do you think? Well, the government closed Operation Blue Book.
Correct. That's right.
And they said there's no evidence that we have ever been visited by.
No, the conclusion was there's no evidence that there was ever a national security threat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean,
they didn't say that we haven't been visited.
Well, they couldn't they could by UFOs that they couldn't explain. The Maelstrom Air Force Base 67. There was some. We've had them in virtually every Minuteman location. Minuteman missile, U.S. Air Force.
So why do you feel it is that mainstream journalism has not made more of this story? And that's what the problem is.
For whatever reason, there's a taboo on this topic, and I don't know who owns the newspapers or who owns CBS or ABC or whatever. What I do know is that many local journalists, both radio, TV, etc., around the country for years have passed this stuff up, and it gets blocked. If you notice, I get a lot of press here in town. Our Missourian and Trib is very good. We get it online, etc. But I write to to the folks at the other networks, and they've been trying this. The big shot's been trying this for years. Just can't get it done.
It just can't go national. Now there was a report. Is it called COMETA? The how do you pronounce it? Cometa?
Cometa.
The Cometa report. What is the Cometa report?
The Cometa report was a report issued by an independent group of French men and women in 1999.
So not that long ago.
Not that long ago, but the point is, in my article that I wrote on journalism, this was not even picked up in this country until Leslie Kean of the Boston Globe kept at it, and finally the Boston Globe published this incredible article. On their Cometa committee, they had 2 Army generals, French generals, 1 admiral, the head of the chief of national police. They had Andre Lebeau, who is the director of their NASA, was their director, and then resources from all over the government and other governments.
So what did they say?
They said essentially that really the bottom line, the big one, was the extraterrestrial hypothesis, meaning the fact that the likelihood of folks, off-planet folks, visiting here, they accepted at the 90% confidence level statistically, as did Edgar Mitchell, our astronaut, who then wrote an article on this. So that's pretty heavy-duty stuff. But that's only one little piece of the whole thing.
Have there not been reports of astronauts in orbit, our astronauts, seeing some objects outside the capsule that they just could not explain?
They have, and some of those are online. I wish I could, off the top of my head, give you the citation for it, but let me say this. There's a woman by the name of Dr. Carol Rosin, R-O-S-I-N, and anybody can Google her by that name. Carol was Wernher von Braun's personal assistant the last 2 years of her life. She also worked with, knew virtually every one of the early astronauts. And she told me, almost without exception, they all said that they had witnessed UFOs. And there was one sighting, I've forgotten which launch, but what the astronauts are saying to Houston, they're saying, whoops, there goes another bogey. Well, Houston was siphoning that off, and the only people who heard it were ham radio operators. But what a bogey is, it's a UFO, but it's certainly something, they tried to say it was ice particles on the windshield, et cetera. But those are the kind of things that need to be examined.
Yeah.
That's what Congress would do.
You know, the other night I walked out, it was after dark, and I looked up at the sky, and I was looking at the Milky Way, which looks like just a cloud, a haze. And you realize you're looking at this Milky Way where there are billions of stars like our sun, with solar systems.
300 billion galaxies like
300
ours
billion
that
galaxies.
we know about.
So how many other planets and solar systems are out there? For us to imagine that we are the only one, it's just naive. Is that a word to use?
A DVD that I show in classes when invited, and I wish I could get into more because there's a taboo there too, but in that DVD, there is Edgar Mitchell, Gordon Cooper, scientists from Stanford, Princeton, etc., who look at this very issue and say, you know, there may be ways for those folks to get here that we don't know about, that there is another physics. Now, your average physicist will say that's nonsense, violates our laws, etc.
But there could be another way.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Bill, we're out of time. If people want more information, what can they do?
Well, they can call me for one thing.
Okay.
I guess that's a little risky on phone.
If you want to give your phone number.
Yeah, 573-817-1512.
817-1512.
And I spend a lot of time at the local coffee shop talking with students and others. That's what I do, so I'd love to do it.
Bill, thank you so much for coming by, and I do want to have you come back again because you're an interesting man.
Well, I talk around it too much. We need to get to some of the facts.
All right. Tomorrow, Saturday Morning Science and Boone's Lick Folk Festival is on. Our show directed by Travis McMillan of the Reynolds Journalism Institute, Audio Pat Akers, KBIA, our floor director, David Ordway, who goes back many years with us, and our assistant producer and guest coordinator, Uncle James Mauser. To watch this program again or listen to it again, go to kbia.org, click on Radio Friends, sign up for a vodcast or podcast, and like us on Facebook. Bye-bye.